Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chris and Andre Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chris and Andre Show. This is episode 58. I am Andre. 58.
You know, you really got to just start giving me an opportunity to get my. I'm back in the driver's seat on the, just throwing a complete wrench in your introduction works. So,
you got to try harder, dude. You got to, because I know it's coming. Like, if I breathe, you got me. If I,
I mean, that's a pretty succinct way to put it.
Yeah, it's like, oh crap. Yeah. So,
sorry, I stepped on you introducing yourself, which was not polite for those that are tuning in for the very first time to episode 58.
Yeah, the rude one is Chris, and I'm Andre.
That's right. So as he said, that makes me Chris. I am rude as hell, and I live in a shell. No, I don't. Well, I mean, don't we all these days?
We do.
That protective shell that is, that thin piece of fabric I call my face mask.
I think I've actually bought a couple of face masks, like I guess they're support frames, because I wear glasses, and that
so
the
you
whole
bought a bra for your face?
I did. So that way my eyesight wouldn't be impaired by like the inevitable fog.
I had seen some advertisements for those. I mean, as you know, I don't wear glasses regularly, but I do love my sunglasses every time I go. I mean, you remember when we worked at a certain place that every time we would step outside, I'd be like, hold on, I got to grab my sunglasses.
Yeah.
I try to take care of these bad boys.
It's your thing, dude.
I got 2015 vision, man. I can't have the UV rays affecting my vision down the line.
He said I got 2015 vision. Dude, shut up. Nobody cares, man. I'm speaking for all the people that are like somewhat visually impaired. Shut up. Nobody cares.
I could have been a fighter pilot.
But yeah, I bought like an ungodly amount of either new mask types or these frames that supposedly help with glasses not fogging up. I found these masks that were like $7.98 on Amazon.
Yeah,
and they actually work pretty well. And I kind of think that I'm going to be in that group of people that wear a mask even after everybody gets a vaccination. But I also don't like the fact that there is not a mask for people with glasses. Like, there's nothing designed specifically for that group of people.
So you said that you bought some of like the mask support systems, I've seen some of those advertised on social media. And so I was always, I mean, anytime that I see stuff on social media that's not like, oh, that's a funny t-shirt that I like. And even then, when it's like, oh, this t-shirt is $25, I'm like, okay, no, stop it. Like, just
right.
just stop it. Or it's like, this t-shirt's $5. And I'm like, okay, but that's got to be like the crappiest t-shirt ever. If you get me in that like $7
to $12 range,
$15 range for a t-shirt, whew, I'm all in, baby. Except for $6 t-shirts, which should totally sponsor us, considering that it's basically it's probably like 80% of my wardrobe in terms of t-shirts these days. I did a complete like restock from them at one point. Christy was like, yeah, you kind of need some new t-shirts. And so they had a deal where it was like, if you bought 10, instead of paying $6 per shirt, you only pay $5. Talking about that per unit price, baby. Got to get that as low as we can go. It doesn't matter how much you got to spend
on the front end,
because in the end, worst case scenario, you turn around and sell it at a profit. I'm in the t-shirt business.
I hate you so much right now. I don't know what to do, bro. I'm so angry at you right now for even.
Why are you gonna pay $6 per shirt when you can get yours from me for $5.78 plus tax? When I open up 578shirt.com, then we'll see who's laughing.
You know that's not how math works, right? like oh man, I'm so angry. I'm mad that I'm engaging in this part of the conversation. So anyway, I bought this one set of support frames from like 4Ocean, the people that take out plastic from the ocean.
Yes.
They were like $20, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of worked, but they kind of didn't. So the thing is, like, in order to keep your glasses from fogging up, you have to raise the mask higher over the bridge of your nose.
Sure.
And a little bit of me that's claustrophobic doesn't like that too much. So there's a lot of just like, I was going to send them back, but I was like, oh, I gave $20 to help remove some of the waste plastic in the ocean. So
and then you immediately threw them away. You're like, no, I straight up drove to the ocean and I chucked them out in the waves. And I said, go back, be gone. I don't want you. Go back to where you came from.
That's funny.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna. You probably picked up on this earlier, but I'm in a mood. So this should be a fun episode.
I did not send them back to their maker, but the lesson learned was that I'm just kind of frustrated that there's not, somebody hasn't taken the opportunity to design something for people that wear glasses.
Did you report them to the Better Business Bureau?
No, because I didn't feel bad about the $20.
No, I know. It's and that's the right mindset to take. I think it always really disappoints me when it's the other way around.
Right.
So like every year down at Carolina Beach, they have this event. It's called the Low Tide Run, and the bulk of all of the profit, from my understanding, and once they pay for all of the fees to put on the event, goes towards very good funds and charities and that sort of thing. And so last year, when they had to cancel it at the very last minute because it was this past weekend and at the same time the year before, so right after COVID hit here in the U.S., they had people that were requesting a refund on their, on their registration fee, and they gave them to the people that were willing to. But it's just kind of like, really, like, it's like,
you were going to donate the money anyway,
right?
Like,
and a bunch of people ended up, basically going out and running the course anyways, because it was like, well, I already paid and I don't have anything else to do on Saturday morning. So,
but how much do they pay?
It's like $40.
Come on, man.
Exactly. I mean, if it's a Boston Marathon, you're paying like $500. Okay. I don't know if that's what it costs to register for the Boston Marathon, but I'm sure they make bank.
Yeah. I was actually talking to one of the boys this weekend about this. I believe there are two, people kind of operate in two spheres, either scarcity or abundance. And I'm probably pro scarcity. And I found that thinking of things like life in the scarcity of fill in the blank, whether it's resources or your lifespan, even, right? You have there's always limited fill in the blank. There's never the infinite pool of whatever you're thinking there is. It's made me more charitable. And I know there's other people in the other camp of the abundance mentality that are just wasteful. Because they feel like everything is limitless. But I've also seen people that take that people, and you're going to love this, that start from the bottom and they achieve some type of financial success. I didn't say what you thought I was going to say.
Oh, I didn't say anything. What are you talking about?
They started from the bottom. Like you're going to leave that alone.
I have no idea what you're even making a reference to right now.
I swear to God, you're so full of crap. You've always, every time somebody said they started from the bottom, you're like, and no, some Drake reference, and then you're like super excited for 20 minutes. But I guess your mood is flawed today.
Who's Drake?
Now you're playing me. So anyway,
I know.
It's gonna be a long conversation.
It is.
This is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really going to be a very one-sided conversation. It's going to be you talking and me interrupting and trying to sidetrack you.
there are some people that have bastardized that, and typically it's people that like they literally start with nothing, achieve some level of financial success, and I kind of sense I think they're selfish, and they have less empathy for other people, and I kind of fall in that camp. I'm not very empathetic when it comes to people's challenges sometimes because life often reminds me, as I told my son, that I'm not a unicorn. I just made different decisions, and I have to remind myself I'm not a unicorn. I'm not special. It's just that I have to do a better job of conveying the message of, yes, that's challenging, that's hard, but you still have choices. You still have options you can take, as opposed to there's some things I'm just not empathetic or sympathetic to. I just don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, in general, like, there are some things where you kind of make your own mess, right? Like, you make your bed and you're gonna lie in it. Sleep with what is it? Sleep with lying dogs and you're gonna get fleas. I don't.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of sayings, and so yeah, like I think in a lot of ways, it's like the what is the old saying? Since I'm quoting them, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. In a sense, yes, there is some randomness to, quote unquote, good fortune in terms of the opportunities that certain people have, right? But
is there though?
Well,
because I don't.
I think there is, because look at the randomness of, I guess, like me being born in this time in this country and, having like all of the opportunities that I may have had one way or the other along the way, right? That's something where somebody born, in Laos at the same time is very unlikely to have those same opportunities. And so I think in that sense, yes, there is a certain element of randomness to it. However, I do think that there is a lot that goes into somebody either recognizing an opportunity and taking advantage of it, right? Having, being willing to take on a certain amount of risk that other people weren't willing to take on, right? Like there's a lot of different reasons that I think people ultimately succeed. And I think more often than not, it's probably because, they worked hard, or because they happened to have a right idea or be able to do whatever it was that needed to be done. I don't know.
I'm starting to think that because I'm not a big risk taker. I'm fairly cautious about a lot of things. I'm very calculated, and I'm starting to. And it's not because I'm a hater. So I know there's some people. You're just a hater. I don't think you're. But I used to believe this. Used to believe that your risk tolerance probably made you more successful. I don't necessarily believe that. I think it's more so you may be interested in or committed to said venture or path more so than anybody else. I don't think it has anything to do with the risk.
Yeah, I think in certain situations, right? Like that's where I think ultimately it's not that by taking on more risk you inherently, are going to be more successful, right? Or that a tolerance for a higher level of risk ultimately equals success.
Right.
Because that's certainly not the case. There are plenty of people who take risks who have failed miserably and repeatedly.
Yeah.
I think,
but we often promote the ones that took the highest risk.
Yeah, because I think a lot of because it's like, because a lot of people have seen what happens on the other side of it, right? And so there is that inherent kind of self-preservation effect that most people, I think, experience in those situations where it's like, could I have put a bunch of money into Bitcoin 10 years ago, right?
God, I hate that conversation, but go ahead, continue.
But yes, like I could have, right? And at any point when it was at one of its peaks, maybe I had the decision to say I'm going to cash out, and I could be sitting, pretty, whatever. Like that's a risk that I was kind of looking at it going, yeah, you guys go have fun with your pretend money. Like that's not something that I ever felt comfortable, and I still don't. Like I'm still not
Right.
jumping at the opportunity, regardless of Coinbase and, the fact that they now have apparently like a Bitcoin ATM in Cary or Raleigh or something now. And I'm just like, that's not me. And at the same time, I also understand that may mean that I miss, opportunities like that, that I'm not driving around in I almost said Lamborghini, but I wouldn't drive around in a Lamborghini.
I would.
I feel like it would probably be a Porsche more than a Lamborghini. Like I feel like I buy a Porsche before a Lamborghini.
Well, financially, sure, you probably.
Well, no, but I mean, like especially
if I had
if I had
Lamborghini money, just get out of here.
I guess
I'm not gonna even lie. I mean, if I had
you don't buy a Lamborghini, you lease it.
If there's something wrong with you, did I tell you about the time I went to this party and my wife and I pulled up and I was like, oh my God, it's a Lamborghini. I know I showed you the picture like 20 times.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, yo, somebody's got a Lamborghini. Like, it's like, this is crazy. And I thought it was one of my friends, his friends, because he's a DJ. And I didn't know how much money DJs in this area can make. So I'm like, somebody's balling out. They're probably doing some exclusive clubs, blah, blah, blah. We go to another party and see the same car. And then I start lining up people. I'm like, I know it's not him. I know it's not him.
Right.
There was this unassuming guy, like 26, 27, construction worker. And his goal was to grow his company large enough so he could buy a Lamborghini. And that's what he did. Yep. And I was talking to him about the one that's on Glenwood. And apparently all the Lamborghini drivers around here know each other.
Yeah.
He goes, his is leased. It was the first thing he said. It was so epic. I was like, yo, hate and shade right there. And my wife, she's always telling me to make sure I behave myself at parties because there's a couple things I could do that probably she's like, I'm not okay with that. And so we're outside and we're just like, we're guys. We're like hanging around the car and blah, blah, blah. And I guess my wife had met his girlfriend and she met the girlfriend first and she's like, oh, I'm with so-and-so. And then she comes over to me and we're talking. And I'm like, oh, this is his car. She goes, huh, that explains your girlfriend. I was like, we all stopped and looked at her. I was like, yo, that
you said the quiet part out loud.
It blew my mind. I was like,
yo,
I would have never said that. Yeah. I mean, he's an okay guy, but it's kind of like she's a model, literally, technically, and professionally a model. And he's probably punching above his weight class. I don't know. But she said it because I guess from a woman's point of view, she was like, no, this makes it work. Oh, God. I love that. That's funny.
So did I get you completely sidetracked on your other points?
You did.
Good.
Actually, let me come back to that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I don't think risk is the secret formula. I think it's a matter of, even with Bitcoin, right? You can take a lot of things and just you can kind of see people's interest or their level of passion for said topic. And that probably drives a lot more of it. In my opinion.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I mean, probably.
I mean, I was wrong once before. My mom told me. She said, baby, you're wrong once. I'm like, oh yeah? She goes, but don't worry. It was just a dream. You woke up from a bad dream. No.
I swear, you've used that on this podcast before.
I just want to, I'm very confident in my opinions. But I always give my disclaimer. I could be wrong. Prove me wrong.
Those are not the same thing. Those are not the same thing.
They don't have to be.
No, but I just like, I could be wrong. Prove me wrong. Like, those are two. They're just so, I mean, they're not diametrically opposed.
But
Oh.
but that's yeah.
So speaking of that, just makes me think of, I texted you, I think it was last night, when I was at the beach this weekend for my mom's birthday, and one afternoon we were kind of sitting around and Christy was taking a nap, and I was like, well, I'll just find something on TV to watch. And so I was flipping through Hulu, and because I recently upgraded to the Hulu Disney Plus ESPN Plus package, now all of like the ESPN stuff shows up on there, right? Because you can now basically stream through Hulu. And so
Right.
their 30 for 30 series, which I have always loved, several of, like, basically any of the ones that I've ever watched, was on. And so I started flipping through, and there were a couple that I ended up watching. The first one was about the USFL
Yeah.
and its inception and ultimate failure. And I tweeted about it, but I just had to talk about it again because it really did just remind me of how much I don't like that guy. Like, I'm not even, it's just, I'm so glad that we don't have to deal with him on a regular basis anymore. Like, because everything like, even back then, watching him in like the clips and stuff that they had of him in like the 80s and 90s when all of that stuff was going on, was just like, this guy was always such a jackass. Like, how did anybody ever really, like, how did people continue to fall for it over and over and over again?
You know, one secret thing about the rise of Donald Trump, and I kind of thought about this over the weekend. If you look at what our economy was doing since like 83, 84, and the pivot from building the middle class to the individual and how much you can acquire and consume, that's Donald Trump. Like, his whole persona, even when I was younger, was about what he accomplished, not even seeing or peeking behind the curtain. It was all a farce. But he was a reflection of that. If you look at people, the generations that voted for him, they're typically my senior, and they are of the younger group, they're people that are fascinated by reality TV. It's almost the perfect marriage. If you look at the people that support him, and like MAGA country people, they are my senior. They grew up in the 80s. The just the constant consumption and acquisition of things, and people that are fascinated by a lifestyle they don't have. And there you have it.
Yeah. That last one, like that one always kind of fascinates me. Which is, like, is very confusing to me. It's not even fascinating because it's not something that I'm like drawn to, but it is something where when I see it, it's, it always is just kind of like, because the mindset usually is like, if I'd only had this opportunity, if I'd only done this, if only, this had worked out differently, then I'd be living on easy street and, everything would be better for me. And then it's like the reality of then literally everything that is around you right now would be completely different, right? Like, your family, your friends, your entire relationship with everybody else would be completely altered by all of that. And to especially I think the people who like say that stuff out loud regularly to the people around them. It's kind of like, I mean, what a dick. I mean, like, it's this. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that your life was so miserable. Your life with us was so terrible that if only you'd had that opportunity and been able to get away from all of this. Like.
Right. But the funny thing is, I've been fortunate enough in my life. I know a good handful of millionaires. There's a common theme, like even though they're millionaires, and this is no hyperbole. This is like, these are facts.
Yeah.
They all still work. Like people that have never actually had that financial freedom, they think that they stop working.
Right. Yeah. You retire as soon as you're a millionaire. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm living on easy street. Everything just makes money for me now.
Yeah. That's not a thing. That's not a thing in the real world.
No.
Like I probably will never retire. Like that's probably in the cards for me. I don't think or do I believe I'm wired that way? Hopefully I get to a point where I can like do something super cool and keep the lights on perpetually by my own efforts. I'll probably never retire.
So I guess I have a question about that. We've talked about it a little bit on this show. I don't know why I like referring to it as on this show. I feel like now this is like a late night talk show. If we recorded a couple of hours later or earlier in the day, that maybe we could be. But so we've talked about like essentially the complete overhaul in the retirement savings apparatus here in the United States, going from company kind of held and managed pension funds to 401ks and stock market driven, investment and all of that. And I wonder, I mean, do you think that plays any role, that people don't always have like this kind of built-in retirement apparatus, that a lot of the times with 401ks, it's not like, oh, we'll put away 3%, regardless. And then, like if you're not putting in that 3%, you and I know that at Addy area, when they introduced the 401k program, there were people who did not enroll in it.
Right.
Right? Like did not sign up for it and were essentially throwing away free money because the company matched. Like at least, at least put in what the company is putting in, is willing to match. And so that, at least in my mind, because then it's like, otherwise that's all money that, they're getting a tax break on the back end. I'm not saying there isn't a benefit for them in it, but that feels like that's money that they're otherwise not going to ever give to you. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong, but you're also,
it's not an exact representation of how to look at that. Okay.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people, I don't know. Like I can tell you this, my theory on retirement and the what's happened to the greatest generation, what happened to my parents' generation, I understand why they're pissed, right? I literally get it. My generation, I don't really understand why we're pissed, because we've had more opportunity than our parents probably ever will, right? I do believe that retirement is, it only worked with their generation and doesn't work with our generation. Like,
why?
One, because the cost of living is probably 3 times more expensive than what it was in their generation. Number two, a lot of the charities that are like mainstream right now are because of my generation. They weren't prior to. They were just kind of like floating above water. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what we really want to do. We want to figure out a way to contribute back to society. And that doesn't necessarily mean that traditional retirement. It may mean that you're figuring out ways to, give back to your community. You're not working for, Acme Incorporated, but you're doing something that helps. So I think there's a lot of complexities in it. I don't think retirement is as important to people my age as it is to people my parents' age. I'm really starting to feel that way. Like I really have started to notice that that the conversation with retirement is typically like, 60 plus. It's not 50 or 40 to 50.
I would retire tomorrow if I could.
No, you wouldn't. You'd find something. You wouldn't. I can almost guarantee you that you would not retire tomorrow. You'd want to take like a month vacation, but you'd still want to fill in the other 11 months with something meaningful in your life.
You don't know me.
Okay.
You don't know what I'm all about.
But I bet you 25 cents I'm right.
I don't know, man. I mean, like sometimes, okay, you've seen the movie Office Space, right? It's like a white people shit movie, but that's the one where with the red stapler.
Probably.
I believe you have my stapler, and Bill Lundgren or whatever who's like, I'm gonna need you to come in on Saturday. We're lost some people this week, and he's like, yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thanks. No. Okay. Anyway, it's a Mike Judge film, creator of such classics as Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, and he's done a lot of other stuff as well. But Office Space. So wait, what were we talking about before then?
You're not going to retire.
Oh, right. So the main character in that, like, basically his whole thing is he just like he hates his job. I mean, granted, he works at like a crappy tech firm in the early 2000s, but his whole thing is like, if I could, it's this question of what would you do if you had $1 million? And he's like, I'd do nothing. I would just do nothing. That's all I wanted. I just want to do nothing. And granted, I couldn't do nothing every day. But if you told me that like I didn't have to do anything to earn money in order to be able to live comfortably for the rest of my life.
Is $1 million comfortable?
No, I'm not saying that.
That's my point. So that's why I always say, like, sure, that sounds great on paper, right?
Yes.
$1 million does not cut it.
Right.
Like the average person will earn close to and or $1 million in their lifetime.
Sure. And at this point, if you've got $1 million by the time you retire, then you haven't saved nearly enough money.
Right.
Because you can't live on that for 10 years.
Right. But would you want to, like,
I understand what you're saying, that like you would find something to keep yourself, not like to keep yourself busy, but you would find like you would feel some emptiness in,
because I'm keeping
or some void.
The thing is, you're keeping the lights on, right? I can find something to keep the lights on. That means like paying my bills, affording my lifestyle, right? But if I can do something I enjoy doing and keep the lights on and give back to people, why the hell would I retire?
Because if you love what you do, it's not work.
And that sounds super cliche, but it's super on point and super real.
It is. No, and I recognize that, but that's what I'm saying. Right now we're talking about working, and you wouldn't be working.
And most people,
because you would be loving. I don't know.
I swear. But you know what I'm saying, right?
I do know what you're saying.
That's why people quote unquote retire and they move to Central and South America and they open up an orphanage. Or,
if I retired, I would edit podcast episodes all day long.
Because you'd be catching up. Yeah,
well,
I got it.
For the rest of my life. So I need to retire tomorrow. No, but I would probably pour myself very much so into, like doing more active social media marketing or whatever for the podcast and the website, like writing more on that because I really like writing. Like when I don't have to do it, when there's not a gun in my head.
But my point being is that the part of the conversation we're not having is that the expectation is no longer for the vast majority of Americans, if I'm being super honest.
But I think there's there's an acceptance to some degree, right? But I think there is still a desire for that to be at least like, I mean, yeah, because I think a lot of people do. Even, right, our generation, my generation, and your generation, like, we knew going into it that really wasn't going to be an option for us, right? Like I've been hearing since I was old enough to remember, not 3, but like since sometime in school, like, well, Social Security is not going to be there by the time that you retire, right? That there won't be any sort of government, plan to help. And granted, I also understand that Social Security was never supposed to be like, I'm going to retire and live off of Social Security and that alone, right? Because it was
the partner was the companies, right? And
right.
The companies bailed out of that.
Yeah.
And I blame Bill Clinton for that.
Well,
yeah. If I'm being like legit,
no, I know.
I 100% blame him for that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to cut you off. I just think that if we're being like,
but you will.
So Tom's shoes, but Bonobo's socks. Like you start to think of all these socially conscious companies that are doing something that earns a profit, keeps the lights on, but they help other people. Mm-hmm. That is it's not a fluke. It's one of the things where you're starting to see the makeup of what and why companies are one of the greatest inventions, according to Steve Jobs. And I actually agree that ever came about in the 20th century. It allows you to collectively work on something that helps other people. And it doesn't always have to be profit driven. It can be enough profit to keep the lights on, but to do something that contributes back to society.
Yeah.
And this is like me not being like, pie in the sky unicorn thinking and dreaming. It makes sense. Why there was a time less than 10 years ago where there were a lot of seniors going back into the workplace. Mm-hmm. You know why? They were former CEOs, former CFOs, former higher level executives in companies and mid management trying to contribute back to what they saw was a gap in the business market. There's a reason for that. Like we're probably wired to help each other. So I'm not saying like you shouldn't have enough money to get to that point where you can, semi-retire, which is becoming a more prevalent term, but there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not trying to like
is that cash where you're working part-time 35 hours a week instead of full-time 40?
That's a whole nother.
Sorry, that was a reference to our conversation last week.
but you see my point there, right? So yes. if I can supplement my whatever stash I have at retirement and give back, I'd rather do that. One of the things I want to do is open up like a real youth center and like give back to the quote unquote inner city. Like that's one thing that I really want to save my pennies enough to do, to where I can actually go back and help people.
And not just so your name's on a building.
Yeah, I don't want my name in a building, right? I'll buy the building, but I don't want my name in the building.
God, the day you die, I'm going over there and I'm writing the Andre Powell.
I mean, but I'm being for real, man. Like I want to be able to like really stop and pause and help out. And there are meaningful ways. Bill Gates, although I was not a big fan of Microsoft in their early practices, the more and more I learn about where he's at in his life now, I can only admire him. Even though there is there's skepticism of waiting for billionaires to solve our problems.
Sure.
I can't say he's not genuine in his actions.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm with you. It'd be great if we didn't live in a society where we required or where we expected billionaires to be the ones to have to bail us out of crappy situations, right? But right. In a sense, like we kind of find ourselves where we do because we have so many freaking billionaires in this world right now, right? I mean, like as you alluded to, but talked about earlier, the massive increase in the cost of living compared to the average increase of, a worker's wages in that time period inflation has increased more than people's wages have in the same time period.
And I hate to even have to defend that argument, right? Because
Yeah.
I am pro company. I think that companies don't have the moral incentive to do the right thing for their employees.
Right.
I was challenged one time some years ago because I wanted to change the average wage of my employees. And the challenge to me was to look at my competitors, and I was told that, well, you can't afford it. And I said, I bet you I can. I can afford it by if I can reduce my turnover, churn, or whatever you want to call it, whatever your vernacular is. I don't really care.
Yeah.
If I can reduce that, I bet you I can see like a 15 to 20% increase in sales. I was told I was called arrogant and too cocky, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have a leg to stand on in this art. It was a tough conversation, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I looked at my competitors and I said, okay, I'm not going to pay my employees more. I'll match what they're paying. Guess what I did? Everything I said I was going to do. I reduced turnover, didn't have to replace employees. I saw a 23% sales increase. All the right things. The employers have a unwritten moral obligation to make sure their employees are happy, because I can almost guarantee you, if your employees are happy, they're probably not going to leave.
Yeah. Well, and I think, at some point there became a massive confusion about what makes employees happy too, right? Like there became this disconnect that it's like what they saw was, startups have pool tables in video games, and that's what people like about that. And it's like, it's also the fact that they're in at an inception point where they feel the opportunity to grow with the company and be an important part of what's happening and be rewarded for it when ultimately things shake out positive if they do. Like, if you're only providing one of those elements, then you're kind of missing out on what is, not to say that I didn't like having a pool table or, a kegerator at work, but right. It didn't make me it wasn't man, if it weren't for this pool table and kegerator,
I'd be out.
I'd be out, right? That was never the thing that was going to keep me there.
There's the last time I saw a follow-up to this, I'm not anti-HR, just for the record, but there's been a survey that goes around.
Are you anti-people operations though?
I am definitely, because I don't know what that means. That's some WPS right there. It's yeah.
That's some let people choose their own bullshit title.
The number 2 reasons people leave companies, and it's not money. It's lack of training and poor treatment. And I can attest that if once you're truly aware of that and you're willing to do the work to fix those 2 things, I can almost guarantee you money's not an opportunity.
People will take less money to work somewhere where they feel like they're making a difference, right? Or that they're happy, yeah. Right? That's just it. It's I always,
dude, I've made less money ever since I left that company.
Yeah, and you're 10 times happier, right?
It's amazing.
Exactly. You if they called you tomorrow and said we will double your salary to come back, would you take it?
No, I'm good.
Right.
Hard pass.
Granted, I can completely understand why in your case, and not everybody would necessarily, but that's where I think right, there are people out here who think that, well, the reason I'm not happy is because I'm not getting paid enough to deal with the crap I have to deal with at this job. But if I got paid more, I'd be okay having to put up with this crap. Is how you reverse that. Pay me more and I'll take more crap.
That's not true. Like, there's
Right?
no rational human being that is like, unless you're just
That's wired but that's how people think. You know,
Ah.
that it's but it's not. It is like
money attracts new talent. It doesn't keep talent.
No.
That's so I want to be very clear when I say that.
Yeah.
Money only attracts talent. It does not.
Right, because what happens when you're hiring somebody new? It's the quote unquote honeymoon phase. It's, look at all these bright smiling faces because we literally had a corporate meeting this morning and said, "Hey, new person's coming in and if I see one frown, you're fired."
Right.
Right? If I hear one negative piece of feedback on what this place is like when you're talking to them, you're fired.
And that's why the unions at Amazon won't work. Amazon's got their own problems for their supply chain. Those are, and nobody really knows what's really going on. And I get the media impression. I'm telling you that the reason why people leave, it's not because they're not making. If I'm an Amazon employee, and it's not a very demanding job, like overall, it's not. It's not extremely like technical. It may be demanding like in that area where you have to understand the system, but it's not technical at the end of the day. And people have the schedule they want. They can keep their lights on. Their managers aren't berating them, and they've got comparable benefits to anything else. I'm pretty confident all the problems they have, they go away.
Yeah.
It's lack of training, poor treatment.
Yeah.
The minute you start treating people poorly, like
that's when all of the other issues pop up, right?
Yep.
That's when they stop being willing to look the other way on all of the other problems because people, like early on at E Area, like, was it perfect? No, but
hell, I got promoted in like not even 30 days of being.
Yeah, exactly. He fucking ditched me. But even when I started, same thing, right? Like, yeah, I think it was within like 30, 45 days, they were like, we're going to move you to this other position because we think you'd do great there. And I was miserable there for 30 days. And then they moved me somewhere else. And I was like, oh, I actually kind of like this. Like, I could do this for 2-3 years. And then 14 years later, no. Yeah, it's just... 14
years later, it's like a SpongeBob.
But it was one of those where, like, because I liked what I was doing, right? I could see the impact that my job was having at the company. And I was getting trained, right? Or at least being given the opportunity to learn the skills that I wanted to learn and needed to learn to do my job. It was like, okay, cool. Some of the stuff that I don't love about this, like the wacko CEO who might storm into the office any minute because he's pissed off about something, or plop down in a chair and eat up 3 hours of your day and still expect you to get your job done.
Yeah, but even with that, your skin got a little bit tougher, and I think we worked each other. We helped each other to do that because a lot of that stuff wasn't. It didn't shake me. I didn't cringe.
No, that was like yes. After a while, I learned to just kind of like, just to be prepared for it. Like, you knew it was coming, so.
Or just to go on vacation.
Well, okay.
I think you like put your junk on the table, and I was like, yo, I don't know what to do. This is like my second day, and this is happening like right now.
So, and it's funny because there was a point where I think I recognized my value at that, like that tipping point where, for me, I always kind of have this tipping point, I think, at companies where it's kind of like, I feel like I should be doing better. And then I'm kind of like, okay, it's not that I can't be doing better, because I feel like, like I understand that desire and drive to improve, but like, I'm doing something pretty good here. Like, I'm I'm helping. Like I can again, like I can see the impact that my job is having, and especially when I moved to production and was able to see it like on a dollar bill, bottom line basis, and it was like, okay,
You need me, yo.
yeah. I mean, that was what it boiled down to. It was like, well, who else is going to make all that money for you? Because if I go away and I haven't trained my replacement yet, and granted, that was not why. I'm just a terrible teacher. And had never been put in that position of having to train somebody to do my job. Like even working at like Starbucks or Blockbuster, like it's a completely different. That's a skill set that anybody that walks in, and no offense to the people who worked at Blockbuster or work at Starbucks. Like, I understand not everybody can walk in and learn how to operate even a push button coffee machine, because I've seen it not done correctly far too many times. Like, I know what their training process is like. Like, you should know how to make this drink. But yeah, like it just, I'd never had to do that before. And so it was like, I don't know, like, what are you good at? And you're like, did you really just ask me what I'm good at? Okay, here's what we're going to do.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to take back all your words. Yeah. And
it's like with my kid when I like, hey, you know what? We're going to hit the reset button. All right? This morning has been awful, and we're just going to kind of reset and not pretend like it didn't happen, because we both know it happened, but we're going to reset the scoreboard and we're going to move forward at 0-0. Like, because you are so far in the hole right now, you're never going to get out by the end of the day. It's like when you're, it's the mercy rule, essentially. You know, you're down by too many runs in the third inning. Oh, game's over. All right, let's start again.
But I'll tell you what, man, when you're like, no, I'm going to go on vacation, I was like, yeah, I don't know how this plays out in this world, but I know in the world I just came from, this is ugly.
See, and now at that point, I still had a buffer, because I still had OB, and he was the one who had told me and approved my time off request. And so I had told him, I was like, hey, this is happening on this date, and you know I put this in, right? And he was like, oh yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah, it's all good. But I know that he wasn't prepared for the where the hell is
dude. The more I think about it, I keep remembering like, yo, he knew that before he went to that building. There's no way he went to that building without knowing that. That was the conversation he walked over there to have. Yeah. Like, thinking back on his personality, I'm like, no, your boy knew. He was going over there to make sure, see if he could like work that deal another way.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that at some point it had gotten back to him, oh, well, he's not going to be here. What do you mean he's not going to be here?
In his mind, there was an 87% chance.
Yes.
That he was going to.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that. I mean, there was a 90% forecast of rain, which meant that 100% I was staying, and it was just a 90% chance of how angry he was going to have to get before I was going to cave. And I just wasn't, like I was not happy with that whole process at that point. Right. I was pissed about the way that they had gone about handling that. I felt like what we had been asked to do was so basic that it was like, you really think that I don't? You're really worried that like
that's the thing,
that I haven't been sitting here kind of like checking, and like you've basically given me nothing else to do, and I have an extra person to help me now, like. And I mean,
So let's give the listeners some context. So the company we worked at, E-Area, was changing their platform. Our primary job was to make sure that all the ads were going to be displayed so they can get that money. We don't have a get that money bumper, do we? We need to get that money bumper.
Noted.
You're going to forget. So, Chris, I'd been there for like barely, it was maybe my first week and some change.
Yeah, I want to say it was like week 1, maybe week 2.
Yeah. And Chris was going to go on vacation with his family for July 4th weekend.
Yep.
And they wanted to verify that all the money-making things were going to be there. And Chris was the expert.
was the
Yeah.
Chris was the only person who had any idea how any of that was ultimately going to work.
Yeah. And we're leaving. It was a Friday, yeah, or a Thursday.
It was Thursday, and that was part of it. Was that Thursday was July 3rd?
Second.
No, Thursday was July 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, and Friday was July 4th. I could be wrong, but
we're leaving.
We normally have the 4th of July off on Friday, and so I specifically had put in because back in the day, we never knew what holidays. There wasn't an official company holiday schedule. It was whatever the king felt like it should be that week. Right? If everybody done a good job, Valentine's Day is a holiday. Like,
dude, Monday could be a day off.
Friday was usually a great holiday. Every week, almost at 1 o'clock, like, if not earlier. But yeah, it was just like, so I had put in the time. My boss, my manager had approved it. And I had even said, because then, like, as this launch, which was supposed to happen prior to that week,
right,
got pushed back. And because what they realized was, oh crap, we're going to be launching potentially at a time when we would have 1 million, right? Or but at a point where we would have lots of eyes on our website. And they rightly recognize we should push this back, and we should do it over a holiday weekend when there is going to be significantly less traffic. Sure. When they made the announcement, I was like, brilliant. I totally understand why we're doing that. I hope you all have fun with that on the 4th of July. I've already put in for my time off request. Again, champion decision. This is how legends are born. Let me know how the birth went when I get back. And
so he's leaving Thursday. We're walking out of our building, and lo and behold, the CEO walks up, and he asks Chris, "Hey," he asked you because he knew the answer to the question. To be fair, so I'll see you tomorrow, right?
I had all my stuff. No, it wasn't even I'll see you tomorrow. It was, where are you going?
That was it.
Where are you going? Oh, I'm leaving for the weekend to go down to the beach with my family for my pre-approved vacation time.
So the CEO of this company, the founder, is white. Chris is white. Let me give you some more. Like, this is from my point of view. I'm like, and this white boys that got fired
like on the spot. This dude, he just said, "What? I'm leaving to go on vacation with my family." He was like, "No, you're not." And I was like,
this is going to happen.
Yeah, I am. What do you mean? Look at me.
See my stuff, right?
And I'm like,
I'm a corporate America refugee. And I'm thinking, I'm watching the vultures start to swarm.
Yeah. Like, I've seen this movie play out a lot of times before. Yeah. This doesn't end well. I don't think this kid, like, I just got promoted is probably what was going through Andre's mind.
No, Andre's mind was like, I've been the director of this movie a couple times. I'm like,
and Andre's like, yeah, I've seen this happen, and I know what's supposed to go next.
And as I watch Chris get into his car, turn it on, and back away and leave, I don't know. I get to
he threatened me before I left.
I walked away. I backed away. I was like, yeah, this is getting kind of like.
Yeah, no, and it was hilarious because as I recall, it was like you didn't exist to him, you know? Like, I mean, because you were right there, and then you just kind of like, it was like Homer into the bushes, you know?
I was not trying to be collateral damage.
And he literally, I mean, he didn't blink. He never broke eye contact with me. I could see his nostrils flaring. And I like, it was like you could just sense that blood pressure building up. And he was just like, you do realize that if anything goes wrong and I can't get a hold of you, there will be consequences and they will be dire. And I was like, yep, see ya. Because at that point I don't know. I wasn't in a good spot.
Yeah, you're probably realizing he's flexing on you. And I think
that was a big part of it.
Everybody, they get to a point where it's like, you're not going to flex on me. Like, I don't care who you are. You be the most white bread person on the planet. You can't just walk up on everybody and flex.
Yeah.
And this is real talk, I've got no hard feelings for anybody there.
No.
But I will say there was some suspect stuff.
Yes.
And I didn't let Dre come out to play way too much there because I probably would have got locked up, man.
Yeah.
There was some stuff where it's like, that's your ass, yo. Like
yes, there were a number of times that people showed their ass at that company. And far too many times where there was no real repercussion for it. You know what I mean? It's, look at the management group, right? Like you look at, who was hired and brought in and put in charge repeatedly. And look, and I say this as a 36-year-old white cisgender male. Like, it was a bunch of white dudes sitting around talking about shit like a bunch of white dudes. Like, that's when you have no other perspective. And on top of that, it was 99% white dudes from the tech industry.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the tech industry hasn't exactly had the best reputation when it comes to their treatment of diversity lately. Other than that, then it's just diversity for diversity's sake, or
I don't know, because
diversity to avoid lawsuits. But
you look at Sunday Pichar, you look at
there are look, you're absolutely right.
Here's my point. Like, I think that if once companies get to a point where they hire the best person, the person with the most leadership qualities, diversity is less of a question. It's less of, you're going to force the people around you to hire people that challenge them to cover your weak spots.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as a 44-year-old black man, like, I didn't get really good at my prior career until I started to recognize the fact that, hey, I've got blind spots. And I need people around me, not people I necessarily agree with even 40% of the time, that help me to see the other point of view.
Yeah.
And people think I'm joking when I say that. I'm like, no, I'm literally not. I actually hire people I didn't really want to hire because they would talk about things in interviews that I was oblivious to. I listen to NPR to this day because there are points of view that I'm not programmed to care about. I don't listen to them and agree with them. I'm like, that's an interesting point of view. The mental challenge is the aphrodisiac for me, because I don't want to think I'm right all the time. Even though my kids may say that, Dad, you always think you're right. I'm like, no, I don't. I have a tendency to express my opinion because I'm afraid not to express my opinion, not because I think I'm right, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like,
no, I get what you're saying. And I think, do you think that comes, do you have any sense of what that comes from? Is that just naturally something within you? Or do you feel like that's your life experience growing up that's kind of put you into that mode more often than not?
I think it's a little bit of both. The life experience tells me that if I don't speak, I'm not part of the team. If I'm not honest, I get depressed. Like
Yeah.
if I don't tell somebody how I feel about fill in the blank, I mentally beat myself up. So for my own mental health, I'm like, yeah, I don't like red shirts. Not like in a Kanye way, right? But yeah, but you see what I'm saying, right? So it's
Yes.
like I don't want to have to like self-diagnose things I could have said.
There are people who are perfectly capable of, for an extended period of time, swallowing everything that they think honestly up when they feel like it might not be what someone else wants to hear. Like, I am capable of doing that for an extended period of time and not having it weigh on me too grandly. Like, I am just kind of, I know. And it has been a real challenge over the last year or so for me to really change that about me, because I had very much so gotten into that habit of just kind of sitting back, waiting to get a sense of what it was. I mean, it was one of the things that I really had to challenge myself when I first got into people management, like people operations, people management. So because I didn't want to have those hard conversations with people, right? When people weren't doing their jobs, when people weren't showing up for work, when people were doing things at work they weren't supposed to be doing.
Right.
I would rather just hope that nobody saw it. Like the old Chris, right, would have sat there and gone, if nobody comes and says anything to me about it, I don't have to do anything about it. I'm not even going to address it with this person. I'm just going to hope that they know that they made the mistake and that they are going to be responsible enough to correct it, right? Something that they may not even be capable of recognizing that it was a mistake. If it was something that was actually job related, right? Where maybe I know, hey, we don't do that, or you don't want to do that because of X. And I'm not imparting that knowledge on somebody because I'm worried it's going to hurt their feelings. Like, that was one of those things where I had to get over that because it was about me. It wasn't about that person, right? I tried to make it like I'm trying to protect them. I don't want to hurt their feelings. No. I didn't want to be uncomfortable having that uncomfortable conversation. And somebody, I don't remember who it was, told me that like it's really important to have those uncomfortable conversations. Because otherwise nobody knows what you're thinking. Nobody is going, and especially, I mean, it's true throughout life, but I think there is a certain element of that in the workplace people struggle with. Like people struggle with, I think, being honest about or figuring out how to like what constructive criticism is, like not
tearing people down.
Yeah, that it's not, hey, you made a mistake and you're a terrible human being for it. It's, hey, you made a mistake. This is the first time you've made it. So I'm going to help you understand why it's a mistake and what we can do to correct it. And then next time when, you go to do that, we'll see if it happens again. Or maybe then that next time I'm going to walk you through it to, okay, second time it happens. All right, now we need to understand, why does this keep happening, right? Like, maybe it's a training issue. Maybe we need to go back to that, right? I mean, like, I know you know this playbook because you were literally the person who wrote it for me. But not that's part of it though, right? Like all of the time that I spent in the College of Management at NC State, that was never addressed. Like actually managing people. And granted, I wasn't going into HR, but I don't think that you should have to be in HR to understand or receive basic people management training, like how you actually work with other people.
So I'm going to give you like 3 nuggets. And I still believe this. You never manage people, you lead people, right? You manage things, you lead people. It's people aren't binary. And that's where a lot of management courses fail, because every personality will predicate your response to it. Like if you know that this person's quiet, you know how to approach them. If this person's very outspoken, you're going to approach them differently. The second part is people don't get hired at a job to get fired. And It's the leader's job to remember that. It's not the employee's job, because they're probably doing everything to stay employed because they actually applied for the job. Your job is to help them to stay employed. And if you fail them, they probably get fired. So that's where those tough conversations come in. Your objective is to help, is like, the person you are at work is the person you are at home, and vice versa. You can't wear multiple hats. Um, when you do that, you become less effective as a leader. And it doesn't mean you're leading this, grand plan of like world domination. It's just, it's just the reality of like, leadership is getting multiple people to achieve to achieve an objective. That's it. And whether it's a small task or a large task, your job is to lead them. Your job is to be the buffer. Your job is to, filter some of the noise that gets people distracted. So it's, with all three of those points, it's probably why I speak my mind, because I know that, there's somebody here. I've not always driven the car. Sometimes I've been like a passenger, and sometimes other people, we talk about it, off site or outside of a meeting, and nobody wants to say anything because they're afraid of getting fired. But I know that no employer wants to fire every employee every day. Like, it's just not a thing.
Yeah, they don't show up going, who do I get the opportunity to fire today? Right?
Yeah. So those, if you're the same person at work that you are in private, then you have to, you have to definitely be that person. If you understand that people don't go to work to get fired, there's a rare occasions, but for the vast majority, people don't do that. You respond that way. And, if you understand the difference between managing things and leading people, and that's hard because people get titles and they feel like they're smarter than everybody else. I just don't believe that's true. I believe you hire people that cover your weaknesses. If you're a good leader, that's what you'll do. If you're just looking for somebody to say yes to everything you say, good luck. You'll have your job for a limited amount of time.
Yeah. I mean,
that
I never understood that, but again, right, that a lot of the times boils down to those people not being comfortable receiving, hearing the word no, right? Or not having had to deal with that a lot in life prior to that experience. And so it's like
So what you're saying is every leader of a company should be black or non-white.
Yeah. I mean,
no,
no, but I understand. I mean, you're not wrong, but yeah, I think that is a lot of what it boils down to. Like, if all you want around you is yes men, then it's because you hate hearing the word no. It's because you can't imagine somebody else having an idea that is of equal or greater value than the one that you have. And if you're so narcissistic, then like, why are you running a company? I mean, like,
but
go write a book.
Well, why people are narcissistic? Because they're selfish. Like,
Earthquake.
Inherently, they're not selfish to their own fault. They're selfish because, like, our society kind of drives that.
Well, I mean, what better place for a narcissist to thrive than an environment where people feel obligated to say yes to them?
Right.
Right.
Oh,
and to cow to their every whim. I mean, hey, it's fuck off Friday and I want you to drink. I have work to do. I said it's fuck off Friday and I want you to drink. Now go get a beer and let me stare at you awkwardly from the corner and watch you drink. Yeah. It's cold, isn't it? It tastes good on your lips.
Starts now.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like, these are.
But even with those faults, right?
Yes.
Like I remember I got accidentally promoted by saying no. I didn't agree.
Yeah. No, I mean, and look, it's not always the case that. I mean, look, I'm not saying that. I'm sure you would agree, right? Not all CEOs or people who start companies are narcissists, right?
Right.
And that's certainly not what I was trying to imply. And it's not to say that somebody who may have narcissistic tendencies can't also successfully start up and run a company. Like, I think
here's the thing. I think we have to be not just comfortable with being uncomfortable, but understanding that we're probably seeing the same thing, but in a different language.
Sure.
And I think that was, when I think back to that time, that's more or less what it was. Like, I understood what he was saying, but I also understood that the people listening at that moment, you included, probably heard something completely different.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah, I heard the consequences will be dire. And I'm like, so what? Like, you're going to call me and I'm going to have to talk to you? What? Like,
or,
I mean, like,
yeah.
like I do, I mean, like, we work for a tech company. I was going to have internet. Like, that's all I needed. I had a VPN.
Well,
it was
the internet doesn't travel
yeah,
that way. You understand that, right?
I hate to put anybody on blast, so I won't use my name, but that was one of the dumbest things I ever heard at the tech company that I worked for. I'm sitting there refreshing the site, and I'm still getting the old one. I cleared my cookies. I'm in incognito mode, or whatever it was at the time. I'm still getting the old one. I'm messaging the person who's supposed to be in charge of all of our IT systems. And the response I get is, well, yeah, the internet probably just hasn't reached you down there yet. And I really wanted to be like, yo, dude, that is not how the internet works. But you know what? I'll just wait a little bit longer.
I'm going to let it slide.
I'm just going to wait a little bit longer.
I think that the challenge of leadership is, I don't believe that people are born being the leader. Number one, I think you can actually learn that skill, if you want to do it. Anybody can learn to manage anything. If you buy groceries, you can manage anything because you're managing what you're going to put in your cart. It's a very mechanical exercise.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Yep.
It's not very.
I was sitting there going, now wait a minute. You're saying anybody who can go grocery shopping can lead people? And I'm like, wait, no, because we were just discussing the difference between leadership and management. And he just said, yeah, you can manage something. Sure. You can manage to get the things that are on your grocery item. Granted, I can't always manage that.
Well, that's a personal problem. That's a failure. You gotta work on that. But trying to lead people, if you have, I don't know the right word. I don't think it's compassion, but if you you believe in the organization you're in, if you want to see it be successful, you want to make sure people around you are successful, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that formula looks like, but I know that you can duplicate it,
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's just, I think maybe part of the problem, right, is what you talked about there at the end of it, is that far too often those pieces aren't also in place, right? And so a person who's in a leadership role doesn't feel connected to the mission, right? I mean, we talked about this last episode, right? You look at the mission statements companies put out now to blah, 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 and make friends with everyone we meet. And it's like, no, man, we want to make money if we can, but at the end of the day, like, we want to make sure that our customers are happy and that, we have a good product. Like, that's what our mission is. And those are the things that you can sign up for every day when you walk in the door. You can say, I have the company's mission tells me that as long as I am doing those two things, right, that everything else will work itself out.
Yeah.
And as long as I keep those two things in mind, then the rest of my job should be fairly easy. I think, to your point, what becomes really difficult is when you're trying to understand how some wishy-washy, feel-good mission statement aligns with that decision I'm having to make in that 5 minutes. Should I or should I not fix this problem, right? Like, is this something that needs to be escalated to somebody else? Is it something where I should feel comfortable telling the customer to go piss up a rope? Like, what is my guidance here? And if you're constantly having to rely on people asking somebody else for permission or guidance on what to do, then why did you hire them in the first place?
Well, you can You took good notes. I could. I mean, those are all like those aren't Andre-isms. Those are just things that work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if you look at any successful company, when you separate the wheat from the chaff, like they have the same ingredients.
Which one do you want, by the way? Wheat or chaff?
You want wheat. You burn the chaff.
You burn the chaff. All right.
he's a low key. I get you. I see you play boy. That's the funniest joke. He's like, all right. I got you, B. I see you.
I see you.
I see you. But those things are not the things you learn and I'm not trying to knock any management course.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna knock
that management course. Yeah.
It's just like, look, man, yes, you can learn managerial skills. Doesn't necessarily qualify you to be a leader.
Okay. I feel like I'm really ratting on my own education experience / kind of, I mean, cheapening my alma mater in a sense by sharing some of these stories. But I think it was my junior year, I had to start taking like the 300 level, business management courses, and they required you to take one of each of the different concentrations, essentially. So something in finance, marketing, operations. So you'll appreciate this. So operations class, right? Our entire course is basically a simulation where we run a shoe manufacturing company. And we have to decide how many shoes we're going to produce, what kind of shoes, like in terms of the quality of shoes, like all of these different things that we go in and set. And then you run this big simulation throughout the year and you go in and make changes as everything is. And then essentially, you have to talk about what you learned, right? This was at the point in my scholastic career where I was really dedicated to not being in class. And so after like the second week, I fulfilled that commitment and stopped going to class. And then with like 3 weeks left in the semester, I realized, oh crap, that project is done. Like I had gone to meet, I think, once with these guys when they first set stuff up. And so I emailed and was like, guys, I'm really sorry. I know I was just completely gone all semester. I totally understand if you want to just tell the teacher I had nothing to do with this and I'll take the 0. Like, it's no big deal. I don't want you guys to put my name on this if like, don't worry about it. And they're like, no, that's cool, man. I mean, if you show up for the final presentation, like, it's whatever. I was like, all right, cool. So I showed up, read what they handed me, and I got an A. But I did learn certain things like from that course along the way. But again, like at no point, even at the times when I was still like actually attending classes, did I ever feel like it was, I mean, and maybe I just never took a leadership class. Maybe that's what I was missing. I was taking all these management courses and I should have been in business leadership.
Well, I think even those they kind of missed the mark, but you need to actually talk with people.
Yeah.
Like when it gets down to it, for me, leadership is like, how can you get to the fact of the matter with people? And it's not about what technique you're going to use. It's not about, it's about having some level of empathy, some level of sympathy, some level of a higher level of honesty where you can actually say, hey, I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, and you have to have completed at least one diversity course, right?
Jesus Christ. God. Make it stop. I can wipe my ass with every company's diversity course.
Oh,
and
you mean
just ask
what is essentially a court mandated diversity course because something happened at work that literally everybody knows about because ain't nobody keeping their mouth shut, let alone the people in HR. People operations.
if you're a company, you're listening to this, look around your staff. And if they all look like you, they sound like you, they have similar backgrounds to you, you
Then you're
might be okay.
probably white.
No, you might be okay. And because your customers are going to be a reflection of you as a company.
Sure.
If your goal is to grow your company outside of that circle, and if you do the same exercise where everybody looks like you, sounds like you, thinks like you, and acts like you, you've already limited your company. Now, it doesn't mean you have to actually, if you're white, you don't have to be black. If you're Asian, you don't have to be white. That's not what it means.
Right.
It means you want a different perspective of your company. And that means you're going to have to be very uncomfortable in interviewing, looking at applications with a blind eye, literally. Not saying that you're looking to target a certain person, but bring people to an interview that something stood out for you. And then draw that same curiosity out in the interview. And I bet your company will grow. It doesn't have to, it's not that complicated.
No.
Like, I don't think an all black company would be the best company. I don't think an all white company or all Asian or all Hispanic. I don't think any of that. I just think that I want to hire the right person, the best person. I would purposely hire people that contradicted my beliefs in operations or business in general. I am an ops guy. I don't care like finance. If I deliver the customers, I'll make the money. I'm not concerned about that. If I have control over my inventory, inputs, outputs, I'm pretty confident I can, make money. Human resources and just people in general. I know my weaknesses, my flaws. I want to have people that actually make me a better person. So all in all, I don't believe it's going to be a all black company or an all white company. I just think that you need to really hire people that make you feel comfortable, that make you that challenge your own way of thinking to be better.
So I agree. And it makes me think of two things. One, and this came up earlier, so I'm glad you brought it back. I thought of it earlier, but I didn't get a chance to share it. But when you were talking about, like people that challenge the way that you think, or like working with people that make it, that don't see eye to eye with you, I always think of Parks and Recreation and Ron Swanson and Leslie Knope, right? Because there was the one episode where I think she was going out for some other job or something like that, and he, I think it was from the last season anyways, doesn't matter when it was from, but they're talking about her interview, right, when he interviewed her, and she got like all upset and, like called him a name and stormed out or something like that, and then wrote him a letter apologizing and all this stuff, and that he had recommended her for the job. And she was like, why would you recommend me? Like, I had a terrible interview. And he was like, because as much as I may have disagreed with your position on things, I recognized how much you cared and the fact that it would provide, like, I mean, in his mind, it was as much like, this will be a fun place to work if I have somebody that I'm constantly kind of getting under their skin. But ultimately, because Ron knew that he wasn't capable of actually servicing the Parks and Rec department the way that it needed to be, and that it was somewhere in between Leslie's gung-ho spend money on every cute little thing and his libertarian everybody should fend for themselves in their playground of knives, mentality, that was going to be the best result. And that it wasn't going to be all Leslie or all Ron, but that by working together, they would ultimately be able to achieve the best results. And that's where I think, like when I look back on our time working together, and you were talking about like you just kind of surrounding yourself with people that 80% of the time aren't necessarily going to see things the same way that you do. And I think that that's part of it. Like talking about blind spots, like you recognize those areas where you may not be the best judge in that scenario for whatever reason, right? And you want to have somebody that you can turn to in those scenarios that you can rely on.
It's no secret. I mean, like you look at whatever encyclopedia of great leaders you have from any extreme, they're number two or they're even up to the number 4, they all challenged the way they thought every time. It's just something in the human psychology that makes that a part of the success pattern. I don't know what that takes. I mean, look at our president. Like, Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Like, and she went at him pretty hard. And I still respect the fact that he was like, yo, that really made me, whatever she said to him.
Yep.
He didn't forget about it. He was like, I need that. I need that in my corner.
Exactly. Like, I'm sure that was part of it. Was like, look, I may not have enjoyed being on the receiving end of it, but I also recognize that that's not something I'm always going to be capable of going out and doing. And that's something that I need in my vice presidency. I need somebody in that role who, when push comes to shove, is willing to fight for what she believes in. And recognizing, sure, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we have enough in common that we can achieve some really great things together. Yeah. And recognizing, hey, maybe my ideas for how to fix things in this country aren't always going to be the right ideas. Maybe it is, a dash of this here and a mix of that there. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you in that. I think if you look back at the successful leaders over the time, and not people who just, I'm not talking about people who just made a bunch of money, right? But like people who were actually successful at leading groups or teams of people. It's being able to surround yourself with people that you can trust, and being comfortable having those conversations where, your answer may not always be the right one. And because that's, again, we look at the last 4 years prior to this, and it was the exact opposite, right? It was, my answers are the only right ones. And until everybody that's here agrees with that, I'm going to keep firing people.
Yeah.
But at least we don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, I know, right?
So,
well,
what were you going to say?
Go ahead. You go.
All right. I know we're going to wrap it up here shortly, but I would be very remiss if I didn't mention that the other 30 for 30, one of the other 30 for 30s that I watched was on Jimmy the Greek. So we've talked about Jimmy the Greek a bunch on here. We actually have an episode titled Jimmy the Greek. I had to pull up his picture in order to do that. But I must admit that I had very little actual understanding or knowledge of who exactly Jimmy the Greek was. I kind of figured it had to do with betting. And that was pretty much it. So when I was scrolling through the 30 for 30s and I saw that they had one on Jimmy the Greek, I was like, okay, after this USFL one, because I had already decided to watch that first, I was like, I'm definitely watching Jimmy the Greek.
Brilliant guy, right?
Yeah. His whole, that dude made you talk about he made an entire killing off of networking.
Yeah.
That was it. He knew people in areas that nobody else was willing to go to those extents when it came to trying to set lines or to bet on stuff. And then, the other part was that I loved an underdog, What's really interesting, I guess, is that turns out I knew a lot more about what happened at the end of his career than I did about any of the stuff beforehand. But I didn't realize that those two had anything to, that this Jimmy the Greek guy had anything to do with this other story that I had heard later.
Well, I think that it goes back to, like I said, you look at any leader on any side of the spectrum, right? The thing I would always say that that's why I kind of scoff at luck. Principles are principles. You apply the right principles to any situation, you're going to get a positive outcome, because they're just the laws of our environment. And I firmly believe that. That's why you can have a Al Capone, you can have a Jimmy the Greek, you can have a Bonnie and Clyde, You can have President Barack Obama. You can have President George Washington. You can take the same principles, and if you pull away all their activities and said, "Oh, this is the principle that they apply there," you get an outcome. It's just we haven't become smart enough as a society to strip away principles from our environment. So you can use those same principles for good or bad, basically is what I'm saying. And I think that the leadership principle, there's a commonality there, like relationships. It's being willing to be honest about conversations. It's being willing to be, honest. That's one of the major ones that people struggle with. It's being willing to be around people that make you feel like, I don't know if I vibe with that 100%, but he's got a point because he made me think. Those principles don't go away. And I would be hard pressed to find anybody that can challenge that theory. I think my theory is pretty right. I think if you ground yourself in the right principles, it's not luck, it's not risk, it's just the environment we live in. The principles are so interwoven with our society and our environment. You can't go wrong. Yeah. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad you joined us. I'm not sure when you're going to hear this.
Or any episode ever again, for that matter.
But
Andre's going to start going on a SoundCloud and seeing episodes start getting deleted. He's going to be like, wait, I thought we had 54 episodes published. Now there's only 52. 52? Oh my God, what's happening? Sorry.
We had a rough start this when Chris was in a mood, but it's good. It's really good for me to have these conversations. These are things I really kind of ponder over, and whether it's because they're sparked from my kids or because of what's going on in my life, it's kind of cool. You can always catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Google Music, and if you have an RSS reader of your choice, plug our RSS feed into your tool. You can find that at chrisandandreshow.com. Send us an email like thechrisandandreshow@gmail.com.
That's going to get changed someday when Chris publishes a new episode, probably.
Yeah. I know, right? You can always find us and see what we're chatting about on Twitter at Chris and Andre, and on Facebook might have a nail in the coffin, but we'll see.
No, not yet. It's still kicking. It's just nobody seems to be hearing the death rattle from inside the coffin.
But we're super glad you joined us. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. Not sure when you get to hear it, but we will definitely record next week. And as always, I'm Andre.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you soon.